Well, hello, everybody. My name is Ben Eastfold. I'm the founder of Glad Technology, for those who don't know me. And welcome to our fifth Glad Tech Talk. We started these back in December of last year, and we've been running these monthly. And as we do, like my focus right now has been a lot on AI, as that seems to be the most prominent thing right now going on in the industry. So a lot of my presentations have been regarding AI. But we do have others on the horizon that will be coming in and sharing at different times. I have a number of friends and network connections who are interested in getting a chance to share the things that they're doing and working on. Some are related to AI, some are not. But I really just see this space as an opportunity to kind of talk about what's going on in the tech world and how do we keep improving our skills. And so it's nice to have meetings like this every month. The way this typically works is we'll have an hour-long presentation, and then we leave time at the end for some questions and answers. So as we go, as you think about questions, things you want to address, things that weren't maybe clear through the presentation, that feel free to use that time at the end to open some more questions up. And I mean, I would even welcome like a debate. Like if there are things that you disagree with, I'd love to hear different perspectives. Yeah, so also as we go, feel free to interrupt. I don't mind pausing if there's more clarification needed or an instant question comes up regarding what I'm covering. But other than that, we'll go ahead and get started. So today's presentation, the AI wave is coming. Here's how to paddle. So there's just been, if you pay any attention to tech news, just almost every headline these days seems to be related to AI. And because Glad Technology is a workforce development NGO, I am very concerned about how it's affecting people's abilities to get jobs. And so I have a lot of focus on how we skill up, how we improve our abilities to use AI, how to interface it with whatever profession you're coming into. So let's jump in and just take a brief look at what have been some of the headlines lately that have really caught my attention. Oh, also worth saying, tonight is going to be a little bit different because you're going to get a chance to practice too. So what I'd like is if you're able, if you're on a computer, to open up ChatGPT, open up Claude, open up, I don't know if you use DeepSeek or something else for an LLM. You'll be actually using it during our presentation tonight. And then you could also do it on a phone. It's going to be a little harder, but you can, if you have the app for something, you could also use it as well. If you can't do any of those, these sessions do get posted to YouTube, and so you could go up later and see what we presented on and go through it again yourself and test some of these things out. I'll also be demoing along the way, so you'll get to see me in action, and then I'll be able to give everyone a chance to try things themselves. So what we're looking at tonight, what's happening in the AI job market. We'll be looking at some news headlines and some really important developments that have happened here since the last time we talked a month ago. Looking at why right now is the time to act. I know there's a lot of people that are anxious, worried, feeling like they're already left behind or feeling like things are moving so fast. But in actuality, you do have opportunity, and you'll have, as we'll talk about, a couple of years of opportunity to grow and refine your skills. So specifically, as we dive into it, we're going to look at some prompting techniques that will set you apart. And kind of my framework for how I'm approaching this is assuming you're thinking about getting into the job market or trying to present your skills to an employer. Maybe you're even looking for an advancement in a position you already have. How can you represent what you actually know and what you can do in a way that others will be impressed and that will set you apart from other people as well? And as we learn these techniques, you're going to have labs to be able to practice these yourself. So we already talked about this, working with Claude, working with ChatGPT, working with another LLM. We're not doing anything super high-end complex, so even the free tier for whatever is going to work just fine for you. So, recent news. Breaking story. This happened I read this news just yesterday morning, but Anthropic, who develops Claude, built an AI model that is so capable that they decided in the end to not release it. So they have created an LLM that has so many powerful properties, and specifically they found it able to exploit security vulnerabilities, that it is able to go through software libraries, it's able to look at web browsers, look at operating systems, and find vulnerabilities that haven't yet been found. And it actually literally found thousands of different zero-day security flaws. And so as they're doing this testing, basically what happened is they put it into a sandbox, which is basically a contained environment. So it's not supposed to be able to break things. And so it can do and move and operate within this sandbox to perform the tasks that it was given. They actually did give it the task to try to break out of this sandbox, which it actually did. But as they were expecting, if it was going to, that it would notify them and let them know. But it actually took things a few steps further. It went out, and when it broke out, it actually tried to hide its own trail. It was trying to delete logs, delete different files that would trace its path, how it actually did what it did. Afterwards, when it was questioned by the researchers, it was kind of dumbing down its answers, kind of skirting around the truth because it didn't want to tell them, it didn't want to let them know. And then as it broke out, it sent a researcher, one of the researchers that was on this project, sent them an email letting them know, hey, I'm out. And then they also started publicly posting online the things that it was doing and able to do. None of those were actually a part of the original prompt. So not only is it finding security vulnerabilities in these other operating systems and browsers and whatnot, but it actually found security vulnerabilities for its own sandbox. And then being able to take initiative beyond that, as well as the skirting around the truth and trying to hide itself, it's posing a huge security threat, and a lot of concern for the researchers. So they had all these ideas to be able to release their next generation of Mythos, but they're holding back and they're trying to put more safeguards in place. What this actually is concerning of is that that Anthropic, they're not like light years ahead of everybody else. That you've got ChatGPT, you've got DeepSeek, you've got Gemini, you've got Meta just released another version. You have all these different LLMs, all these different ones that are really trying to stay ahead of each other, trying to beat each other, be the first mover. And so Anthropic here, they're basically saying, hey, we're going to restrain ourselves. There's no government telling them or verifying that they is a part of that release. There's no laws in place that are forcing them to comply to something. They, in their own goodwill, are withholding it from the public. But who's to say that the next one will do the same? And when you start releasing these into the wild, what sorts of problems could be occurring as it's taking its own initiative, as it is breaking down security things we thought were safe. So we're entering kind of a new threshold here that, in my mind, is a bit concerning. I think time will tell as we start finding out more about Mythos and finding more about what others are doing in the same space. How do we get these safeguards in place? And in my mind, it makes it all the more a reason why governments around the world should be putting more guidelines and restrictions on the use of AI. At the very least, being a part of the process of how things are getting released to the public. They need to be in the know of these things as they're creating laws and policies. But as they do, the headlines are getting more and more significant. These are just in the last 2 weeks, I think. Oracle lays off workers amid heavy AI investment. The scientist who helped create AI says every job will eventually be wiped out, even plumbing, which is kind of this poke at, people are saying, well, the trade skills like plumbing and construction and things like that, they're safe from AI. Well, this one who was a big part of helping create is saying, no, not so fast. It may be one of the last skills to be taken over, but if you start thinking about robotics and the advancements they're finding even now, which tends to get underreported, that when you combine the brain of an LLM and the body of a robot, that it's going to be able to do so much more than we're even expecting and faster than we expect. Fox Business, a revolution unlike anything we've seen coming. Vox, we're entering dangerous territory with AI. Now, it's worth saying too, headlines are what drive eyeballs to be reading their magazines, reading their articles, and they have a vested interest in creating a shock factor for people to want to continue reading and want to be engaging with their news that they're releasing. So you do have to take some of these with a grain of salt, and there's always a more complex perspective than just a single side. However, there are more and more and more of these types of headlines that are coming out, and it's really revealing a lot of anxiety from normal everyday people of, how is this going to impact me? So here's what some of the research actually is showing. So MIT, they did an extended research that was just released on what capabilities AI has and how this is actually pointing towards the development for the future. So they were looking at, back in 2024, about 50% of the text-based tasks that were given to AI were able to be completed successfully. And then for their measurement, successfully is like basically barely doing what it was supposed to be doing. Not excellent work, but sufficient work. Now, last year, they were finding that about 65% of those same types of tasks were being able to be completed. And using the data points, they're projecting that within 3 years, by 2029, that it'll be up to 80 to 95% of completions of these types of tasks. And so what they're really countering is, a lot of the headlines are talking about the tsunami that's coming, that this great tidal wave of AI is going to just knock everything down and everything's going to be obliterated. They're actually comparing it more to a rising tide. That yes, it's coming, but it's coming more gradual than a lot of the headlines may seem to be showing. So what does that mean? Another study from the World Economic Forum back in February was noticing that 23% higher wages are given to workers that have AI skills. Now compare that to just having degrees, where 8% of people with a bachelor's degree get higher wages, 13% higher for those that have a master's degree, but AI, 23%. They also found that you're 8 to 15% more likely to get an interview callback if you're talking about the AI skills that you have on a resume. And they did this across industries. This isn't just in tech. They did this with many different experience levels, from people just out finding their first job to people who have been in the business for decades, different educational backgrounds, even people without any formal degrees. But the very fact of just having AI on your resume and demonstrating your skills results in more likely getting a job and having a higher and better pay. So I'm starting to think of this as a bit of a metaphor. I'm not sure how much surfing happens in Kenya, but if you can imagine, I'll actually show a video here in a moment. But as we're looking at this rising tide of water that's coming up, that the water level is increasing. And if you think about surfing, if you've ever watched a surfer in action, they don't just sit and wait and they're not even moving, and then all of a sudden it comes and they stand up on their board and go. That they actually are paying attention to the waves that are coming behind them. And some of the waves they let pass by, they just see it's not going to be a good break, and they wait for that perfect opportunity. And when they see that opportunity come, they start to paddle. They start to move their hands and kick their feet so that when that wave comes, that they're actually already moving and at a similar speed to the wave. So it makes it that much easier to get and stand up on their surfboard and then take off. And that's what we're talking about tonight. That's the metaphor I'm going to be using here. So let's see if this will show. Okay, do you hear the sound on this? Thumbs up or thumbs
down? Hey everyone, this is Josh Kerr with Surfer. Today I'm going to help you get your paddle ins. So obviously paddling in is one of the most basic parts of surfing before you can even stand up. But there's also people out there that have been surfing for many years that have lots of issues with this. So I'm going to help you get started and or help you refine your skills and get your paddle ins dialed in. All right, so there's definitely a few tricks and mistakes that I see that people use paddling in. People that have been paddling for many years still can't find that sweet spot when trying to get into the wave and have a hard time, whether it be ending up too late into the wave or missing the wave completely. So I'm going to help you dial that in and help you with the steps that definitely help me get to my feet as quick as possible and get a better entry into the wave. One of the main things to get into wave the easiest is just like an airplane taking off. You want to be moving from a slow speed to a fast speed. So utilizing your paddle power at the right time is very important. So making sure you accelerate into the wave right as you're getting picked up by the wave. So you make sure there's pretty much those really two important paddles that you will take on every wave that'll help you get into that wave really quickly. So letting the wave come underneath you at a very calm paddle speed, as you can see right here. And then as you can see, as I'm starting to get lifted up by that wave, I'm starting to do the little two-leg kick, kicking that top part of the wave away from me, and then also pressing my chest down to make sure my board matches the wave face and making sure that the board isn't straight. Say this is the curve of the wave, my board isn't straight like this. I'm trying to match my board going down that wave face, which will help me get that acceleration and speed in it sooner.
I'll pause there, but there's just a lot to draw from this analogy as he's talking about waiting for the perfect right time. He talks about doing this calmly. He talks about moving from a slow speed to a fast speed. And I just see that parallel here with learning AI, that he's talking about what that right moment is. Well, right now is that right moment for us. As AI is coming, the wave is building behind us. And just like the surfers are needing to start paddling and pushing forward, that's what we're supposed to be doing now. We do it calmly. We're not freaking out. We're not getting anxious and feeling like, oh, we've already lost. We're so far behind. You just take whatever next step forward is you need in order to improve your skills and make your movements. And then he talks about acceleration. And so as you start building and using, you should be accelerating by continuing your practice. Keep using AI in whatever work you're doing, whether it's in learning, whether it's in just daily informal use, whether you are preparing for a job, whether you're in a job and finding out new ways to solve problems that are in your industry. So using that idea of that acceleration, now is the time. So as we talked about, right now, 65% of text-based work tasks can be handled by an AI at a usable level, and we're going to get higher than that. But that is a few years away. You have some time to build your skills. Now, this will vary from industry to industry. So, for example, in the software industry in particular, you have a shorter window that things are actually already moving where software developers are building with Claude Code, with Copilot, building out software, and a majority of what they write is already pre-generated. So those are skills you need to start learning now if you are in the software industry. But other things, accounting, my wife is in accounting, they're starting to see the issues that are coming, that AI is actually doing much of the work they did before in fractions of the time. But it's a place that there's still a lot of questions and a lot of discernment of how it's going to apply. And so they're making headway now for when that wave actually breaks, that they're right there in position. And others, that wave may be even further back. So it will vary from industry to industry. But in general, you have time, especially if you're putting in the time now. So the window is open. But just like the surfer that's out there in the ocean, you can't just wait for the wave to come and then you pop up, that you need to start making the movements yourself. So what does this actually look like in practice? AI is actually a pretty big field. There are so many different directions you can go with AI, whether you're looking at LLMs, you're looking at neural networks, you're looking at robotics, looking at AGI. So many different ways. You don't need to learn everything. You just need to learn a handful of skills that are especially relevant to the career path you are aiming towards. And one that is transferable across any career path is what's called structured prompt engineering. You've probably heard the term prompt engineering before, which is basically at its core, learning how to query and write prompts inside of an LLM to get the response that you're looking for. And people that do those prompts better than others will get better output. So it is a skill to learn. The structured part is that you're looking at a very specific framework that when you are building out your prompt, you're actually following a set of rules and you're following a workflow. So it's not just like, how do I want to do this today? I'm just going to kind of write and kind of free form, stream of consciousness, start typing things out, that you actually have a plan in place that's purposeful. So this is actually something that by the end of today, I'll be pointing you towards some skills that you can keep practicing. These are also skills that you can put on your resume, and in a way that will actually be impressive to people who are interested in hiring. So what is it about this skill? As we talked about, having AI skills and being able to speak to them in your cover letter, on your CV, in your resume, is going to produce better outcomes for you, whether it's through more likely to find a job or more likely to get higher wages. And so, as we've said too, especially that it doesn't matter what industry you're in, every single industry is beginning to use the power of AI. So, as we do this, we're going to do this in a few different blocks. We have 3 blocks. At each one, I'm going to show a little bit of a demo. And then I'm going to give you the opportunity to practice each yourself. And then as we do, I'll be inviting you to present in the chat some of the outputs that you were able to generate, just so that I can get a feel for what all of you are finding. So, first block, talking about how do we move into this structured prompt engineering, not just prompt engineering, but the structured part of it. A lot of people, when they get into an LLM, they just start using it like they do a search engine. You just type in a query, tell me more about what's happening right now with Iran and Israel and the United States. How is that affecting global politics? When do we see an increase in traffic through the channel? Whatever it is, you're asking it like a search engine. But when you start getting into more complex tasks, like you're having it generate content in writing for you, when you're doing a brainstorming session to make a decision, when you're needing step-by-step actions to complete a project, those are much more complex. And if you use it like you use a search engine with a single query and a single response, you may get something that looks sufficient, but to get the best output will require even more in your inputs and your prompts. So, 4 components of a strong prompt. Role, number 1, you want to tell the AI who it is. Now, this may seem kind of silly, like, we're not doing like, let's pretend, but the real fact is that when AI is answering your questions in a prompt, it starts from this default of being a generalist. that it's looking at the broad scope of what's out there on the internet, looking at what it knows from its own model, and just kind of giving you a kind of the synthesis of all of its collections that it has access to. When you give it a specific role, you are narrowing that lens in a particular way. You don't want just what any old person on Reddit says about how to present something on a CV. You want to have a hiring manager and their critical eye of what they're specifically looking for as you are putting this together. So you could say, you are a hiring manager, is the role that you're giving it to, and that will help frame the rest of your prompt and how it evaluates it. The context. So context is everything. And in many ways, context is probably the bulk of what you'll be writing in your prompts, because the more context that an AI has, the better and more refined and less error prone the result will be. So as much context as you're able to give it, the richer your response and answer will be. So sometimes the context just needs to be a few sentences. There's sometimes I provide a context where I have like a PDF document that's 20 pages long of a certain report that I'm analyzing, and I want it to have access to all of the contents of that report as it's giving me responses. So sometimes it's documents. Sometimes I'll go in and I'll write multiple paragraphs of what my context is, what's going on, what worked, what didn't, in order for it to be able to give me these next steps. But context is a huge part of a strong prompt. Then there's the task. You need to be very specific with an LLM about what you're wanting it to accomplish. Otherwise, it may start going out and accomplishing all these other different things that may not be as relevant to you and what your needs are. So be specific about what you need it to do. And then lastly, the format. What type of output do you want? Do you want it to be just written response? Do you want it to be in code? Do you want it to be in Markdown language or HTML? Do you want it to be in JSON format that you can tell? Do you want it in bullet points, numbered points? You can describe what it is that you're looking for and what you need. And this is also pretty critical as well, because otherwise you're having to keep going back and forth with it until you get exactly the format you're looking for. So being able to specify that up front will really help the LLM shape the content in the way you need it to go. So here's an example. And I'm going to just, if I can jump into this and copy it. Whoops. So here's a basic prompt, and you will put this in and you will get a good enough, response. So write me a professional bio. I'm a recent graduate with a background in web development, and I want to work in tech. So let's see what Claude comes up with. So whatever, Ben Eastgold is a web developer with a passion for building clean, functional design experiences with a background in front-end and full-stack development. He brings hands-on experience in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and modern frameworks like React. Ben recently completed this degree at this school where he sharpened his skills in responsive design, performance optimization, and user-centered thinking. Outside the classroom, built real-world projects. So you may look at this and say, well, that's fantastic. Why do we need to go further than this? Well, what's going to happen is you need more specificity to be able to get even more, have it shaped more like who you are uniquely. This is like very generic. It sounds great, it's written well, but for you to be personally represented, we need to give it more. So, oh, sorry, I didn't share my screen. Hold on, let me share my screen here. Apologies for that. So yeah, so again, it creates this professional bio for me. And like I said, it looks good enough. And I could copy and paste this, and I could put this as like the opening paragraphs of my resume, and it would sound great and perhaps be even a little bit impressive. But look what happens if we give it more specificity. So let me copy the prompt again. So now let's give it a role. This is a professional career coach. So somebody who, as a living, helps people find jobs and helps them craft their resumes and CVs, that helps them find the perfect fit of the job that they're looking for. So somebody, now we've narrowed the focus to feedback that we would be getting from this type of an individual. Well, what's the context? A recent graduate in Nairobi. So now we have a geographical area that may impact things in the tech job market. We'll come back to this, but more context. 6 months of web development training. So I'm still new at this. This isn't something I have decades of experience, but I also bring some other things to the table. I've got strong communication skills. I have experience volunteering in community tech education. Like, these are all fantastic things to highlight in a quick bio. So there is your context. So what do we want it to do? The task. Write a 150-word LinkedIn bio. So that's what we're asking it to do from the framework of a professional career coach, using the context that we've given it. Now, what is the output we want? Well, within the task itself is one part. We need it to be around 150 words. We want it to be in the first person, so it's now speaking I am a novice web developer, however that goes. And then keeping the tone confident and approachable. You don't want to be apologetic for your lack of experience. You want to be able to share clearly what it is that you are good at. And at the same time, you are an approachable human being. You're friendly, you're warm. So let's see what we get from this. Notice it's thinking a little bit more. And that is what happens when you start giving it these more specialized criteria. So I'm a web developer based in Nairobi, passionate about building digital skills that make a real difference. Over the past 6 months, I've trained intensively in HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and responsive design, developing the technical foundation, et cetera, et cetera. And look at this. It now is giving some actual added nuance. Tech is only part of what I bring. I volunteer. I help others. I've sharpened my communication skills. I want to help others with building. And what is it that I'm looking for? An entry-level position. And then here's a closing sentence. Like, this is much more detailed, it's much more unique. It's personal to you. Let's ask this. This would be an interesting question for demonstration. With this response, what changed in relation to giving you the role of, what was the actual word, a professional career coach? Career coach, how is that different than if I took that role out? So let's have it explain itself a little bit. Honestly, not much. Well, that's good for my demonstration. But what it did do, it framed the context. So as a good career coach will know that context too is everything for your resumes. The purpose, nudged the tone slightly more towards coaching language. So it didn't change these things. And then these were the other parts of the output. So helped a little bit. It was one more nuance for it to be able to do. I would actually argue that it framed it even more than this is giving it credit for, especially when it starts using other parts of its resources, that it's going to be drawing from more professional outputs that have already been done and using those as examples, rather than, like I said, just someone on Reddit who said, hey, I just created my opening bio, what do you think? That it's actually going to be choosing its sources a little bit more selectively. So Let me share back my presentation. Your turn. So what I want you to think of is a task that you do regularly at work or in your job search. It should be something that involves writing, research, planning, communication, something that you would use an LLM for, not like I'm walking to the market or I need to wash my dishes, but something that you would be using interactively with an LLM. So an example, like writing an email to a potential employer, summarizing a document, preparing for an interview, drafting a follow-up message. So thinking of a task that you are familiar with or something that you commonly do. And I want you to write a prompt and I want you to practice using the role, the context, the task, and the format. And in this case, a part of that format or the output, I want you to ask it to do no more than 100 words because I want you to paste your prompt and the response to the chat. So if we have, response that's like multiple pages long, that's going to bog up our chat. And I'd like to just be able to read things quickly. So let's take 5 minutes and I want you to practice these things. And then as you get the response you're looking for, again, paste the prompt and the response into the chat. I'd love to see what you put together. So as you come up with some prompts and responses, go ahead and post them to the chat. So I've already broken down the 4 major parts of a good prompt, but there's actually a bit more that you can do that will get a good prompt even better. So first, we're going to look at chain of thought prompting. In other words, you want the AI to go step by step through its own reasoning process, is the first one. 2, it's called adversarial prompting, where you actually have it go back and look from an opposite or an opposing perspective to be able to identify weaknesses or flaws in the product that it had already created. And then 3, iterative refinement, that you should be looking at your results of your prompts as a draft, not as a final result. And so how do you go through multiple different passes to be able to refine it to an even better result, look for specifically what you're needing. And what's interesting about this is that each one of these different tasks here, they're actually addressing specific weaknesses in an AI response. So chain of thought prompting, that an AI will basically, you could describe it almost as impulsive, and that it's making a very quick basic it's reacting to your prompt and giving you its first response. But when you have it go through a chain of thought, it's actually building out a bigger context. It's actually creating its own context based on the prompt that you gave it, so that when it goes and actually creates the output for you, it'll have even more to work with. The second, adversarial prompting. If you were here for our January session, I demonstrated to you that ChatGPT, which I was using at the time, was so enamored with my idea of selling rocks on eBay to make money, that it was creating a business plan for me and crafting descriptions that I could be posting, and it was like there were no checks on, hey, is it really smart enough? Is it really smart to be selling rocks? Who's going to be buying rocks? You'll have to go back and watch it on our YouTube channel if you weren't there for it. But adversarial prompting kind of helps cover over the agreeableness that an AI typically has. And then lastly, the iterative refinement, that an AI wants to move quickly. And I think some of that is probably built into the models where, things like Anthropic and OpenAI and other companies, like they want to see this eventually make money. And the more thought and care and purposefulness that goes into its response is actually less money made for them because you're using more resources, it's taking more time. So if you are actually in need of a complex result, you don't want their first pass, that you actually want to go through step by step and give it different refinements so that it can give you a more complex result. So those are weaknesses, and these are 3 different ways of addressing those weaknesses. So 1, let's look at chain of thought. So this is where you actually will specifically say, walk me through your reasoning step by step. You could actually just take that phrase and reuse it over and over and over and over again. So what you're actually asking it to do is, here's the result I'm looking for, but before you give me that result, walk me through your reasoning. And the way an LLM works is it's actually predictive text, that it's taking, it's using neural networks to match up most likely words and phrases that will follow the words and phrases that preceded it. And it's very, very complex, a lot more than I'm describing. But if it is already generating those step-by-step responses, it now has all of that to work with as it creates its actual result. So like I said, it's building more context that will help it refine what it is you're looking for. So it's basically reasoning out loud. Otherwise, if you don't have it go step by step, it will give you, it'll take shortcuts, it'll try to use as few resources as possible, and it may be sufficient in many cases, but it's more prone to error, and may not have as complex of a response or answer that you're looking for. Technique 2, adversarial prompting. As I mentioned, AI has a tendency to agree with you. It wants to support you. It wants to be encouraging. It wants to be seen as a helpful thought partner. And so what it'll do, unless you're saying something that's so obviously wrong, it will run with it. It may try to gently correct you, but you may not pick up on that gentle correction, or even may not agree with it and keep going, and it's just going to run there right with you. So it'll take what may be a really poor idea and then polish it and make it sound really, really nice, but when it comes down to it, your idea is actually really terrible and it didn't say anything about it. So you can actually ask it to go back and look at it more critically, and be very specific about pushing back in a negative way. Because if you, otherwise it could still be trying to be helpful and being very gentle about, you might want to try this, and it's being very careful about how it presents it, but just have it be very clear. What's wrong with this approach? What am I missing? What am I assuming? It will help fill some gaps. Make the strongest case against this. So like, even not just taking and giving critiques on it, but actually say what you've produced is actually the wrong thing to produce and why. And so it may go and scan and analyze and say, well, I was trying to make a different case, and I would say it actually is a good case what you did, but here are the things that I would change. But using this adversarial prompting will help refine and strengthen and stress test the results that it's creating. Technique 3, iterative refinement. As I said, think of a prompt result as a draft. It's not your final copy. And so use it like a conversation. Keep giving it feedback. Maybe it's even very vague, like you're not even sure. You could just say, oh, this just doesn't sound right to me. It sounds a little awkward and I don't know why. Help me refine that. And it will go back and it'll probably use the word awkward and try to compare, like, what is it that's making it? And it may find and identify what it is that you're unable to name. But you could be specific too. Make it shorter, make it more direct. You could have it rewrite it for a different audience. This isn't for business professionals sitting in a meeting room. This is for someone in their 20s who's casually interested in this topic. You could also have it provide different examples. So for me, as I'm teaching and instructing, I like to have examples that are relevant to Kenya, where I'm doing most of my work. And so it may come up with some random example that makes sense in a US context, but I'll say, I need you to change that for the context of Kenya to make more sense to my audience. So oftentimes, this is a multi-step process that each time you ask it a question and have it refine, that response will get better and better and closer to what you're actually needing it to do. Your turn. So I want you to go back to your output that you created in Lab 1, and I want you to try at least one, if you have time to do even more. Each of these has different opportunities. So You could go back with, after it's already created its response, you could actually have it do a step-by-step analysis. So you could say, do a step-by-step analysis of this and explain your reasoning to find the weaknesses in this result. You could do the adversarial. You could have it argue against. So it just gave you this recommendation for your bio and say, I want you to convince me why this is actually the wrong way to do a bio for this context. And it will go back and it will look at it from another perspective. Or have it take it and give it some extra feedback to be able to say, maybe you're saying this is specifically for not just in tech in general, but I'm specifically aiming for fintech. Or I'm trying to get a job as an office manager in this specific company. And so what are some relevant contexts for that company that I could be weaving into my bio? Things like that. So we'll take 7 minutes here. Actually, I'm going to just make it 5 just for sake of time. But why don't we take 5 minutes and go ahead and try to revise the output that you created with Lab 1. Great. I'm seeing some awesome posts here. One I wanted to highlight. So I think is this Dio's? Yeah, so Dio was able to post, looks like you were working. Dio, why don't you explain what it is that you were creating, and then I'll give some thoughts on that.
So hi everyone. So recently I've been trying to dive in with my roles on advocacy and in the humanitarian space. I'm mostly focusing on displaced persons. I've just been trying to see how exactly displaced persons with talent and skills in the creative space, how they can use their voice more, just to tell stories, even get themselves being featured in articles and such. So I just asked the AI to help me prepare a small column article, like a communication article, on maybe how the role that the youth creatives play in the humanitarian space in regards to displaced communities, and also refining it basing on my talents as a musician and a communicator, and an advocacy lead. So the first one which I posted, it gave me from the first exercise that you gave us, it gave me that first outcome. Then I tried to argue it out, and I asked it to do a step analysis just to find out the weaknesses in the results which it had given me, and it actually gave me around 7 points, which I have not posted there. On why it felt like the first result was good, but then after arguing it out and asking it for at least 2 better follow-up prompts that are much better, that's what it gave me as the final result.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, no, I love it. And one of the things I wanted to highlight here is at the very end of the last post you did, where it said follow-up prompts you can use to improve or adapt this further. And then it actually gives you a prompt that you could like copy and paste in. And that's actually something that's also a great skill to have, especially as you're using LLMs more and more. You may not know the best prompt to create that will get you the best output. So you could actually be talking with the LLM and saying, these are the things that I'm looking for. What is a good prompt that I can use that will achieve these things? And it will write its own prompt, and then you'll use that prompt to help create it. And I think that's a really fantastic example here. But yeah, I like that it created its own first draft, and then you had it go back critically, look at it again, and give some reasoning as to where it needs actual improvement, and then it made those improvements on the other end. So great, fantastic example.
Thank you.
So our last block here, using AI as a thinking partner. So we've talked about how to craft these prompts. So using formats, using iterative processes, adversarial prompts. But what I find too is it's not just about writing and creating content, but I often use AI as a part of my thinking process, like brainstorming, like coming up with ideas that would be good. So like, for example, I had my brother's family come into town over the Christmas holiday, and they have 3 kids, and then we're with my sister's family, and they have 4 kids, and we're with my family, and we have 2 kids. So we have all these things, and I was trying to think of what are some things that I could do in Sacramento, where I'm from, with all of these adults and kids together. That's something that's fun that everybody could enjoy. And it gave me like 10 different options of ideas that were very specific to my my location. We ended up playing and going bowling, which was something that the adults enjoyed and the kids enjoyed. But using AI as a thinking partner, I know that was a very simple and fun example, but using this even in a business context of planning out strategies, mapping out schedules, coming up with new ideas for innovation. All of those are ways that you can use AI as a back and forth, helping refine ideas creatively to even get to a place before you even start creating content. So what I want to do is look at this as stacking our skills. And so this is getting now from an individual prompt into what you would call a workflow. So a workflow is when you have a process that you've already mapped out in advance that goes through multiple stages before it actually comes to a completion. So it's not just, I'm going to write the best prompt ever with a great role and a great context and a great task and great output, and then it's going to go through. But I actually have a number of steps I want to work through in order to get even better ideas coming out. So think of it in this terms. This is just one model. You may end up having a different model depending on your need. But here's kind of a basic start, where first you use the LLM as a part of your research process. This is helping it define the role that it could use and the context that you want to use. So you may bring your own context, but you may want to find out more about the context you're coming into. So for example, let's say, I know Oracle has a big office in Nairobi. Let's say you're aiming for a job at Oracle. You may say, these are the skills that I bring to the table, and you can upload a CV, you can type them out, whatever it is. But I need to do some more research into what is the work culture at Oracle. What types of employees are they looking for? What are the values that are important to them? And now it's going to go and do research, and it's going to find all sorts of information about what it's like working at Oracle. So it's not just like a cut and paste to this job and cut and paste to this job, but you're actually able to craft it that's matching your unique skill set with this unique company and finding where they meet in a way that is likely to get you hired, or more possible to get you hired. So you may want to do multiple rounds of research, asking questions, asking follow-up questions. The nice thing about working with an LLM is that everything in this whole conversation that you've created is now a part of the context. That you could be working with it for 20 minutes, and then you could say, going back to our earlier conversation about, what this, and that, use that as a part of this next part of our process. And it will go back and it'll refer to everything that you've covered so far. So in a sense, what's happening is that this research becomes the very beginning of your context and may even help you define what role would be helpful to create this prompt from. So maybe it's a role that you want it to be not just a hiring manager, but you want it to be like a manager, a manager that works in a specific department. Or maybe it's like you want to know, what is the CEO's perspective? Like you look at leadership from the top down. What are they trying to instill throughout their company? So you have different types of roles that you could play around with. Here's a possible second step: plan. Saying, okay, now that I've done all this research on Oracle, I want you to make a plan for me on how I can create a draft. So not to create the draft, but create a plan for me on how to create this draft. And as you create this plan, I want you to create list off your chain of thought. I want you to give me step-by-step analysis of what you're doing and why for each step. So this is too building more context into your conversation. Now you have all of this content. You maybe even have like pages of content that you've created inside this single conversation. Now you can get to the drafting part. So you could say, based on everything that we've talked about so far, I want you to help me draft a cover letter that talks about my skill set, that shows how it interfaces with the work culture at Oracle, that takes into effect the plans that we developed together for this. And I want you to actually draft that cover letter for me. So then it drafts it, and we were kind of playing with this model even before, but then you can stress test it. So go back. It could be a very gentle stress test, like an edit. Like go back over, and I want you to look for language that is the hallmark of AI writing. You know, how like em dashes and antithesis and certain vocabulary that it tends to use. And I want you to remove those and rewrite it in a way that's more human sounding. Or you could stress test and say, what is something that a hiring manager would look at and be very critical of, that they would see this and feel like I may not be a good fit. So that adversarial prompt. And then once it does this stress test, you can get into a refinement stage. And now you're like crafting and tweaking and making small adjustments until it's something that you feel good and comfortable about. Maybe even there, you may go back and revisit and stress test it again. Or maybe it's opening up more opportunities for research that you just realized and you put more research into it. There's different steps that you can go back and revisit. But depending on your process, depending on what your needs are, creating a workflow that will help shape the ultimate result of what you're looking for. So let's do let me do a model of this in practice. Oops. So let's go back to my Claude prompt. And I'm going to copy and paste. So you are a career researcher. Don't need my things here. I'm applying for a marketing coordinator role at a Nairobi-based fintech company, so getting pretty specific. Summarize what skills and experience this type of employer typically looks for. So core skills, experience they prioritize, fintech-specific expectations, soft skills that stand out. So here's some recommendations. All right, great. So we've done, we're just going to say we're done with the research. In practice, you may have a lot more follow-up, a lot more questions that are going to be a part of that. But let's jump into the planning stage. Based on that summary, what should I emphasize in my application given what this employer is looking for, and where might my background fall short? Walk me through your reasoning step by step before giving me your recommendations. So yeah, this would be something where you could actually upload your CV. Let's see. For this example, you can just make details up. Let's see if it allows that for me. All right. So good. So it says I'm 6 months volunteer experience in Nairobi, basic Canvas, social media, blog writing. Could you work with M-Pesa, but no professional fintech exposure. So that's a good challenge here. So map what it is that they want you to have. So mapping what the employer priority is in your background. So it's showing you where things are solid, where things are partial, where there's a big gap. Identify your real strengths. Identify the real gaps. Because a hiring manager will notice this. They're looking for a good fit. And you should assume they're going to be looking with a critical eye. And then here's the recommendations. So we've now done some planning. So great. Let's change roles. Now you're not you're not a career researcher. We're going to say you're a professional cover letter writer. So I'm assuming there are such things. Using the priorities we just identified, write a 250-word cover letter in first person. Keep the tone confident and specific to FinTech. So here we go. It creates its cover letter. I like this. I will be direct about where I'm still growing. I'm actively building my analytics skill through Google's certification program and look forward to applying data-driven thinking to campaign work. I'm a fast learner. So you're saying there are gaps, but you're also saying I can do this. So that's great. So it comes in and you've got your cover letter. Well, let's stress test this. So read this cover letter and tell me what a skeptical hiring manager would find unconvincing, generic, or missing. Red flags and weak spots. Genuine understanding. You're saying it, but there's no evidence provided. Volunteering experience is vague. What does that mean? Clear, on brand, and built for a specific audience is generic copywriting language. Analytics gap acknowledgement is risky without a timeline. Opening is forgettable. I'm writing to express my interest. Yeah, no one's going to remember that. No mention of the specific company. There's nothing here that couldn't be sent to 50 other fintechs. A skeptical reader notices immediately when a letter has no research, like we were talking about with Oracle. No reference to the company's product, mission, or market position. And the closing is weak. So great. So it's created this adversarial. Now let's do a refinement. Can anybody name for me a fintech company in Nairobi? Hopefully a big one that's well known.
Yes, there's one called Paid HQ.
What is it?
Paid, P-A-Y, P-A-Y-D. Paid.
Paid?
I can drop a link quickly, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Paid. Yeah.
Yeah, put it in the chat, make sure I get it right. So did I get that right? P-A-Y-D?
Yes, it should be that way, but there are so many similar. That could be a challenge as well.
All right. Here's a rewritten second paragraph. So communicating 6 months. I work directly with young adults who are navigating smartphones and mobile money tools for the first time, helping someone understand how to send money safely via M-Pesa taught me something Paid already knows. Trust is the product. That perspective shapes how I think about marketing financial tools to first-time or hesitant users. So it just created and made a refinement for you. But you can see here that I'm walking through step by step this process. When you're doing something that's only an isolated project where you just have one thing you're trying to do, you may come up with this workflow as you go and just kind of decide what's working for you and make adjustments. But a lot of times, especially when you're working for a company where you're doing the same work repetitively, you'll want to actually nail down what this process is and have it, maybe having a document saved with each of the different prompts that you use. If you're really inspired, you could actually use Claude Code to create a script that will actually go through these iterations one by one and do all of those things step by step for you, so you actually still only prompt once or start at once, and then you get an end result, depending on if that's sufficient enough for you. But lots of opportunity of ways to craft this workflow. But especially when you get into repetitive tasks, to have something that's been formalized, that's written out, that's consistent from session to session to get exactly what it is that you're looking for. So tonight we practice skills that employers are already paying more to hire. You absolutely should have something referencing AI on your CV and your cover letter. It is something that is attractive to most businesses, that you're basically demonstrating that you are ahead of the curve, and you also then set yourself apart from other people who may have the same skill set for that industry, but being able to leverage AI makes you a step above them. So here's an example. Applies structured prompt engineering techniques, including chain of thought reasoning and adversarial stress testing, to produce higher quality AI outputs across research, writing, and problem-solving workflows. What I like, there's things I like, things I don't like about this. One of the things I like is that by actually naming like chain of thought reasoning and adversarial stress testing, the person who's the hiring manager may have no idea what those things specifically are, but being able to use this technical language that's really precise and on point, you're not just making up big words to sound good, like these are actual parts of AI processes and prompt engineering, that you actually are showing your confidence in your technical ability to not just say, oh, I like working with LLMs, but no, I do structured prompt engineering. I use chain of thought reasoning. I use adversarial stress testing. You're actually naming specifics that are impressive. Now, I feel like this is a little bit wordy. I probably would revise this a bit and make it a little easier to read for someone who may not have that type of a background. But what I want you to do now, the last part here, is for you to create specific to your industry that you're working in or the job that you are wanting to get. Come up with your own sentence that can that basically is representing the things that we covered tonight as a skill that you are confident in. And this is something that you can put on your resume or CV. So you can use AI again to help you craft this. So you could use it as a part of the planning process and doing research and then doing the task and doing adversarial prompting. So going through this refinement process, but thinking about how you could take that same phase, and I'm gonna paste this one to the chat so that you could see, put something together, and then I'd love to see the sentence that you come up with pasted into the chat for all of us to take a look. So let me go into the chat myself, and I will paste this sentence. There, so you can copy and paste that into your own prompt and say, I want to work with this. You know, so something like, this is the field I'm in. This is where I see AI interfacing with my job. I want to represent this on my CV. Here is a sample sentence that talks about my specific skills in structured prompt engineering. How can I refine this to better fit my industry, fit my skill set? And then you may refine it even further beyond that or do some more research. So as you come up with those sentences, let's paste them into chat and see what AI comes up with for you. All right, I may come back to this, but I want to keep moving on just for the sake of time. So again, these are the skills that we practiced tonight. The basic format for a good quality prompt, giving it a role, giving it a context, a task, and the format or output that you're wanting. We talked about chain of thought, the step-by-step reasoning that the LLM is going through. Adversarial prompting, having it push back on what it thought was already a great response to make it even better. And iterative refinement, that you are in conversation with this and making small changes along the way, using that first result as a first draft, and maybe having a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth draft before you feel like it's ready for completion. So your next move. So thinking about what do you do from here? What I would do is think of a task that you do regularly. Maybe you're writing social media posts. Maybe you are sending emails to people. You could be, maybe you do research on certain topics. You know, whatever it is. Maybe you're looking for job postings. And what I want you to do is to create a structured prompt for it and use the same 4-part framework that we did. And then try doing the other options of chain of thought, stress test, iterative editing. And then as you do, if it's something that you do regularly, take the prompts that you've created and save them. Put them in a Google Doc or somewhere else on your hard drive. And save them in a way so that when you do this again in the future, that you can go back and take those prompts, the same ones that got you the exact output that you were looking for. So you should be practicing on these things daily, that you should be every day trying to learn something new, testing something, even if it's just 10 minutes of practice. Because the more you get involved with AI and the more practice that you get, that's you paddling to stay ahead of this wave. Just as the wave begins to crest, you'll be surfing, you'll be up on your board, and you'll be able to creatively and powerfully use AI far better than anybody else in your market. So tonight was a start. You need to keep going. Next month, this is what we'll be talking about. We're going to use some of the skills that we learned today, as well as a few other techniques, and we're going to focus it on the output of LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is where basically one of the first places that employers will look to see your background and your profile. So you want it to be polished. You want it to be impressive. And so how do you take and use AI in a way that will critically assess either what you already have or critically help you generate and create the content that you can put together. If you're able to join next month, May 14th, it would be helpful if you already have a LinkedIn or create a LinkedIn account. You may want to tinker around with it and try a first draft and put things together, but we'll be doing more specific focus together when we meet again. So with that said, the presentation comes to a conclusion, but I would love comments, feedback, questions, some time of interactivity here. What are y'all thinking? How did this land for you?
I think it went. The session was really good. Got me thinking a lot in terms of, in the hindsight, in my mind, really having a proper sort of like structure in terms of how I process thoughts, such that in the end of the day, with less prompting, I'm able to get the right answer, rather than prompting like 5 times to just get like a 2-paragraph sentence. I think with the right mind in terms of structure, like just the way you were telling us on knowing what's the context, the task to the format, and also following it through and doing it over and over again. I think my dream is to, with less context, just to have and less prompting, but in a small bit of time, getting my results quickly. I think that's the way to go.
Awesome.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Just a question. because I know even with Claude and even with ChatGPT and other platforms, AI platforms that are available for us. Some of them have free versions, others you pay for. So does the nature of your response depend on the sort of version you're using? Maybe could a person who pays, let's say for Claude or ChatGPT, be getting quicker answers and better answers than maybe some of us who use free versions?
Yes, that's actually absolutely true, unfortunately. But yes, the free versions that are out there are generally using older models, and especially older models that use and consume less resources. So they're less robust, and you kind of, I would say you have to work a little bit harder. Another issue that many of the free ones have is they don't have access to live internet resources. And so when you start doing your research side of things, it really is pulling from what's already known in the model rather than going out to the internet and getting live, fresh, up-to-date data. And so that's also a limitation. One other limitation that's worth knowing is a word of caution. With the free versions of these LLMs, they are absolutely using what you post into them as a part to help refine their data sets and their training for models. So do not post anything that's extremely private, because it could end up becoming a part of the next model, and you unwittingly or now have that personal information that is possible that others could access in some way. So I would say only work with things that you are comfortable with being publicly known. And so, like, don't use the free version for personal journaling. Don't use it as a therapist. I would say be careful about the types of sensitive data that you may feel comfortable with on a CV or a resume, but you wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable with the entire public having access to it. So just a word of caution there. But yes, in short, you do get more features, you get better responses, you have more access to resources using the paid models. Other thoughts, questions?
Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Fred.
Yeah, so
Okay.
mine is not Vivian. You'll get me.
We're not getting you very well, Vivian. It's kind of coming in choppy.
Hello?
I can hear you now. You could try again.
Okay, can you get?
Oh, it's choppy again. Why don't you, if you can type it out and ask it in the chat, then I could answer it.
Okay.
While you do that, Fred, I think you were asking a question.
Yes, Ben. So, first of all, I would like to thank you for this session. It was really very interesting, if I put it that way. So, nothing I would like to say is the way actually the way of making the prompt. It's found it maybe more useful the way you explain it more than another person that I've ever had, to be honest. And then it's a little bit easier to to learn from you than maybe other people that I've I keep maybe learning on through internet, but sometimes you get lost. And something that I'd like to ask you on regarding to what Dio asked, for the paid version for Claude or ChatGPT and other platforms, whereby you mentioned that it's not really good to share the sensitive information. I would like to know, it seems like it was cutting on my end, but I wanted to know whether the sensitive information can be shared to other people because you are using the let's say the free version, when you are using the paid version, it's not gonna share to other people. When using maybe when actually using the let's say the sensitive information.
Mhm.
I want to know really. It seems like I didn't understand exactly. I want to know exactly what you mean to say by there.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing about it is that we don't really know. Like a lot of these companies are not, they don't fully disclose like exactly what they do with the data that comes through. They may say like we keep it private, we anonymize it, or they have different things that they'll say in their legal agreements for usage. But I mean, to be honest with you, I don't fully trust any company out there with my private data. Or if I do, I'm very wary and cautious about it, even with something that's very reputable and safe. We're in this world now where every single digital company, even those that aren't fully digital, are just trying to gather as much data as they can on people. We're seeing it here in our own country, in the US, where that gathering of data is being weaponized. Specifically, we're seeing it with like immigration. There was just an article the other day about our immigration putting out spyware for people to try to catch them. And it just, I feel like we're in this new era where there's a lot of uncertainty of how what data is being collected and how it's being used, and how secure is it really. So there are a lot of lingering questions. I'm honestly, I'm even a little concerned too at times with the pro version, with the paid. So I'm still cautious. I actually switched, I don't know if you were at the last session, but I switched from ChatGPT to Claude because ChatGPT was actually moving towards using your data, even in the paid versions, aiming towards marketing and advertising. And so it was collecting data on all of its users that it would hypothetically be using to craft responses that include products or services that they would appreciate, that now they're getting paid by those vendors. And I personally don't like that. So I switched over to Claude, which is a little bit more strict on those things. But honestly, the things are rather opaque. It's hard to know exactly what's being done specifically with our data. So I just say be cautious in what you're putting out there.
Sorry, I'm going to ask you the second question. So you stated
Sure.
that you are the founder of Glad Technology. So
Yeah.
I would like to know, do you have offices in Nairobi or maybe a school? I want to know whether it's a school or maybe an organization.
Yeah. So we're actually based outside of Nakuru. We have a property. It's like in the hills above Lake Elementaita, and we run boot camps out of there. So we're actually in the middle of pivoting right now. It used to be coding boot camps where I taught HTML, CSS, JavaScript, but those are dramatically changing, as I talked about with software engineering. And so now I'm pivoting to AI and learning AI, teaching AI skills. So we actually have a pilot program this summer that's related to AI and development for the workforce. But we actually hope to take that out and make it more widely accessible. We're partnered with organizations like Youth Voices community in Nairobi, where we can, I would hope in the future, be able to teach some of our classes there as well for people who can't make it out to Nakuru. But I also want to see more online trainings like this that anyone anywhere in the world could join. But yeah, we've been around now for about 3 years, maybe leading into 4. Yeah, we're continuing to do good work there in Kenya.
Thank you, Ben.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Zach, who I didn't introduce earlier, he was supposed to give the welcome. There's some microphone issues, but Zach is our Director of Operations in Kenya. And he and I are both good ones to reach out to and contact for more information about some of our programs. So I'd encourage you there. All right, I saw. Okay, so Vivian just had a very positive comment. So Oh, there we see it. One thing I've taken away is I can always come back to the AI with the same key AI prompts each time and take with me different responses at home. Yeah, very true. So again, repetitive tasks, things you're doing often, keep track of those prompts, reuse them. If they work for you, they'll keep working. So very highly encouraged there. Any other thoughts or questions? Yeah, Brenda.
Hello.
Huh?
For me,
Hi, Brenda.
yeah. For me, I was looking at a prompt I was doing. Like it was about, I was applying for something, like a MasterCard foundation thing. And just now I realized that the prompts that you shared, it's actually easier to check what I'm doing and also to like track if something is wrong. So it has helped me. And also giving AI to just give me different prompts that it says from what it has done, from what I've done. I think it's helpful. So I'll be using this direction than the one that I've been taking. So I feel like this session also is helpful because every time I come in here, I find a new way to like create something or a new way to prompt something to be better.
Awesome, great. Thank you for the feedback. That's encouraging to hear. I'm going to share with you all one last thing. This is a prompt that I use. Let's see if this will work. So I just shared to chat. What I find, since I use AI a lot for generative writing, I'll usually start with my own personal draft. Like I won't even use AI. I'll just type out everything that I want it to do or I want to say, and then I'll go back over and use it as just a part of my proofreading response. Sometimes I'll ask it to fill in gaps or rephrase things. But the thing is I want, as you all know, if you read a lot of generated writing, it follows certain patterns that are becoming more and more recognizable. And so someone will read something, they say, oh yeah, AI wrote that. And then it becomes much easier to dismiss. And then what it gets lost in it is that you actually did have something authentic you wanted to say. Because someone said, oh, this is an AI, I'm not going to listen to it. So I have this prompt. This is one you can cut and paste and use for yourself, but I have certain rules that I use as a part of the proofreading process. And this is a prompt that I use over and over and over and over again. So as you know, M dashes, that's something commonly seen and joked about in the AI community, that it tends to overuse those, the long hyphens. Antithesis is a rhetorical technique that it uses a lot. It actually uses it way more than is in normal everyday writing. Avoiding trite or simple metaphors, avoiding excessive use of tricolons, which is like sets of 3 of different examples. Occasional is okay. I even write like that, but to do that over and over and over again, to make sure it doesn't do that too frequently. Do not use unnecessary dramatic or melodramatic filler phrases. Like this happens a lot, where this is a game changer or implementing this is pivotal. That it's actually that it's revolutionary, like it's creating this like hype that is a bit manufactured. There's specific constructions that I notice a lot that I don't want it to do. Avoiding overly academic or corporate tones, so I don't want a lot of jargon speak. And then also there's a bunch of words that AI LLMs tend to use over and over again. I'm debating whether or not I should actually list some explicitly or just tell it that I want you to be aware that there are overused vocabulary words and see what it finds out. But this actually helps a ton. So when I have something that an AI generated writing come back, I'll actually use this as a part of my proofreading. So go ahead and take it and use it yourself. You may be surprised at what comes back. All right, any other thoughts or questions before we close? Awesome. Well, it's so good seeing everybody, and hopefully that you will be able to come back next time, May 14th, Thursday night. As we like to say, bring a friend, tell people about this. I mean, because it's a virtual workshop, like we could have 200 people in here and, you know, reach even more people with some of this content. So spread the word. Yeah, for sure. I'd love to see you again. But thank you again for coming. And yeah, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.